Hello, everyone. I'm Dash here with another Q, this time from home, the first at-home edition of the Q, and I'm joined by C9's Jack Etienne. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to be part of this.
My pleasure. I think we should start with where the world is. I think it's a natural place to begin, and that is the fact that the world is dealing with a pandemic. COVID-19 has taken the world by storm in some senses of the word, and our industry, like many, has had to react on the fly. So first, I want to come to you just personally. Jack, how are you handling it? How are you doing? Because I think we're a month in, and it's a good thing to check in with each other.
It's been wild. I think saying it's a storm is a good analogy. I sort of feel like it's almost like this hurricane that we've slowly seen this thing move towards us across the globe, and it's finally like on top of us. And I'm feeling confident that I've done everything I can to make sure my employees and my players are healthy and safe. And so I'm feeling as good as I can be considering the situation.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it's been interesting to watch this behemoth of an organization or of a system, the LCS, the teams, the Riot itself, the production, have to try and navigate in the middle of this storm, right? You think of an analogy kind of being in this massive ship that only has a turning radius of so much, right? And so there's only so much you can do at any one given moment. And it's been very interesting to watch the whole of the LCS, from the production to the teams to the fans, kind of react and rebuild, pivot, and augment our current system to still have a workable product. But within that, I think people do have an understanding of what we on the production side have done, because we've had the opportunity to showcase that, quite literally, by you guys being in my bedroom and saying, look at the way the production is now. But we don't have a great understanding on how this has changed from the team and the organization perspective. So can you walk me through those initial weeks? Like, what were you, as an owner, looking to do? What did the organization have to do to transition from a standard, split of LCS play to where we're at now and make it all work?
Yeah, I mean, this is a long story, because back in February, I sent all my employees home, and we started locking down the teams to get them in a really safe place, because we're a global organization, and I had staff that was like in Japan, going to Korea, like all over the world,
right?
And as I was watching the COVID numbers roll out in Asia, and I started realizing how vulnerable we are because we're a global organization, I said, actually, like, hey, I've got staff in Asia right now. They're going to be coming back in a few days. It's actually not safe for my other employees and my players for them to come back into the office and come back into the team homes.
Right.
So we started transitioning all of our employees to working at home. And then we started looking at with our team houses, we have like a CSGO house, we have a Dota house, we have a League of Legends house. And we're like, okay, we need to actually make sure that each house is independent, and is supported in a way that it's safe. And it's pretty deep, because it's not just saying like, oh yeah, employees don't go to this house. Like, how do we get food? Like, how are the players managed? What do we do with the coaches? And we also have, house cleaners, because the players have their laundry done every day. The houses need to be in place. So we moved house cleaners into our League of Legends house, managers into our League of Legends house. And we had to figure that out for our Counter-Strike house and all the other teams as well. We ended up sending our Dota team home because we couldn't really adequately set them up for safety. And then, we used to have, players would order in Postmates all the time, and we realized Postmates is also a dangerous place where
there's a risk. Exactly.
These guys are ringing doorbells all around Los Angeles all day long, and they're if you look at mathematically, they are going to run into COVID, and then they're going to be coming to our house and delivering food. So how do we deal with that? We've got private catering that only works with us, and the food gets delivered outside. We set up disinfectant stations outside our houses where the food is received. It's totally unpacked, everything's wiped down. Only the managers are bringing in food to the house. Only the managers are unpacking packages. It was a huge process. And because I think we started all the way back in February doing this, we really hit our stride in March. And now by April, we're really used to this system. And our goal has been to make sure that the daily lives of our players haven't changed so much. So they're still doing like their morning workouts. We still do a lot of the same things that we used to do, but there is like a bubble of protection around it.
Awesome. I mean, it's immediately cool and clear to me that the human side of it all was approached first, which I believe is the right way to do it. But now I want to talk about the competitive side, because the reality of your organization is that you're a sports organization,
Right.
and if the leagues continue, the results are what fans are ultimately going to hinge on. That competitive, result is what people are going to look at. And so I'll isolate to League of Legends, understanding, as you mentioned, you've now had to do this for every single one of your teams across every esport globally.
Right.
We'll hone in here on the LCS. You have an LCS team that is on the verge of doing what no LCS team has done before when all of this hits us for the first time. You're looking at becoming one of the most dominant ever. And the whole system, gets slammed.
Right.
So what we're beyond the human discussions of, hey, we're gonna take care of you guys and we're gonna do it right. How did you guys come together as a team competitively and reframe what your goals, expectations, and everything were? What was that discussion like? At that point, midway through the split, where you go, this isn't gonna be like any year before.
Yeah, I think my approach has been to be like brutally honest about the situation with the players on what I think could happen and how we're going to deal with it. Just so that I felt like the worst feeling the players could have is not really knowing what's going to happen. And so I tried to explain like, hey, this is what's happening in the world. This is where things are going. This is what I think is going to happen. And really share my thoughts with them and them share those thoughts with me. And we had a lot of conversation about it. And at the end of it, they're like, okay, we get it. This is what's going on. But all of our goals are still the same. This doesn't change, like the drive and the passion to be better every single day. Mm-hmm. So what do we do to make sure that like when we're playing on stage from home, that we're still in the same serious mode that we had when we were going to LCS? And so some of that, like what we did was like, okay, like, because what we saw is the first weekend we played at home, there was a bit of scrimminess to our game, and players were taking risks that they do in scrims, but they shouldn't be doing on stage. And so we're like, we needed to address that mind state. Like, hey, how can we recreate the LCS vibe of very serious play without taking too big of risks? How do we get ourselves in that right mindset? And like literally, we broke it down. Like, what is our usual day at LCS? And like, okay, we spend this much time going over to the LCS. The players spend this much time like preparing for the match, and we tried to recreate that as best as possible. We happened to have a literally, a house just a few doors down that was our Dota house, which was empty, and we're like, okay, we're gonna like walk over to the Dota house. We're walked over, several hours early, just like we did with LCS. Some of the players have like meditation routines that they would have. They'd go through that at that house and try to recreate everything as much as possible to make it feel less different, even though it is very different.
Yeah. I mean, and what's interesting about that is it's like, to me, it strikes a very significant balance or a proper balance between acknowledging the given circumstances and saying, look, we cannot change this. We're going to operate within the confines of what's happening to us in the world, but saying we're not going to surrender to those circumstances in the sense of, nipping in the bud all the things we would normally do. So we're going to adhere to, the systems that we have in place that we rely on or that we feel make us better as a squad, while, surrendering to the things that we can't change and not let those get in the way. Yeah. Do you feel like 4, 5, 6 weeks in, what have you learned through this process, I guess, because it's ever evolving for all of us. The first at-home broadcast I did for the LCS is very different than what it was last week, just from our own understandings and learnings of, putting something on in a different environment. What so far have you guys learned, as an org or as a team in these last 6 weeks of being tried and tested?
I mean, I've got a pretty special bunch of guys with their focus and resolve to be getting better every single day, and it's been tested like in a big way, and it's been really gratifying to see how resilient these guys are, and that their drive to be the best has not wavered at all. And there was a vote that went around the players union basically saying, hey, like, should we be, some of the players are saying the split's not worth anything, let's just go home. And they were just literally the first thing I got was a message from Sven saying, is this a joke? Like, this can't be real. How can these guys not be focused? Because all of, they were still razor focused on getting this thing done and doing a great job. And for me, I felt a lot of pride, like, wow, these guys got it. And how can I support every effort to make sure they want to get it done?
I don't think I've ever met a league player that has more fire behind their speech than Sven. When I did that pre-finals interview, pre-finals interview where we talked about failure on the key, and just his willingness to say, or to own up to those mistakes. And just admit that, it's just the ownership. That's what it is. It's ownership, taking ownership of mistakes. But then you still see this fire, this smolder behind his eyes for like, I'm not done. I am not done, and I refuse to be done. This, to me, transitions perfectly into, I think, maybe one of the things that about you that has the most mystique, which is that you seem to have built just the best teams of people around you. When people look at Cloud9 Esports, they always talk about the org, the structure, and the personnel, and how Jack has built such an incredible organization. So we'll work our way back to today's version, but I do want to do the rewind, the typical rewind that we do here on the Q, all the way back to the early days of Jack. And this is actually going to take us back to TSM, where you were first a part of TSM management and then transitioned out to Cloud9. So let's talk about those early days of esports. When did you understand fully that esports had legs, and that the right play for you was to endeavor into your own venture, into establishing your own team? Granted, I know you jumped onto Quantic and took. Right, it was you came over to Quantic and helped turn that into Cloud9. But when did you know that this was a thing and something that you were capable of building?
I was helping Reginald, Andy, helping him make money with his website. And it was more like a side project, because I was the head of sales for Crunchyroll, which is an anime streaming website.
Yep. No. Well.
And I was, one of my video game publishers that I worked with said, hey, you got to help this guy, Andy. He's got a wonderful site. It's incredible traffic, but he needs some experience on how to make money with the site. And so I had several long conversations with him, and I was really intrigued by what he was building and how fast it was growing. And so I got involved with helping him, make money with the traffic he already had. And once I think he was really comfortable with his websites running well, he really focused on esports. And I was interested, like, what is this thing you're doing? Like, you're moving out to New York. What are these events you're going to? And I watched a couple of MLG events that the viewership was huge. And I'm like, whoa, this is, at the time, like, StarCraft was considered the by far best esport. And it was great, but these league events were crushing them in viewership.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, this is something really special here. So I started going to events with TSM, and I saw the passion of the League of Legends crowds. And it was really stark in comparison to what you saw with the StarCraft audiences. Both were full venues, but the league fans were just like so animated and passionate and excited. I'm like, this is special. I love being a part of this, and I just wanted to help Andy run as smooth the operation as possible. And I just dove in with both feet. But it was like, literally, it was a hobby. It was a passion. It was for fun. My day job was Crunchyroll.
Okay, so then so from day job of Crunchyroll to the decision of I'm now going to go both feet into the esports scene. So
I mean, it's a kind of it's not really a well-known story, but basically the owner of GGU, Good Game University, which got second place in the inaugural split, 2013. he said, hey, like, do you want to buy my team? I've seen what you're doing with TSM. I think you could really help my guys, blah, blah, blah. And I thought, wow, that sounds great. But if I had this attachment to Andy, and I'm like, hey, would you be okay if I, got this team too? I'll still support you. Don't worry. But like,
Right.
I'll help you do sales, but I want to do this because it looks fun and what a cool opportunity. I ended up buying that team.
Yeah.
But the players, they really wanted to play with, they really wanted to work with the Slans. They had some personal relationship with the Slans.
Mm-hmm.
And after several negotiations, we couldn't really come to a place where the players were comfortable playing for me because they had all these plans to play with the Slants because they weren't happy with the current GGU situation.
Okay.
So I said, okay, I understand. And while this is going on, I got introduced to Hai, and I got introduced to Medios, and Hai told me like he wanted to play for me. He just won his spot into LCS. He's like, hey, will you buy out my contracts and I want to play for you? And I'm like, I've been seeing this team scrim against TSM. Like, I get to watch the scrims. They're a really good team. I really liked Hai's energy. And so I ended up buying the players for Quantic, selling off GGU to the SLAN. So everyone was happy.
Right.
And it ended up being like this fantastic situation for everybody involved, and maybe me best.
Now, you already commented that you spoke to Hai, you loved his energy, but did you know what you were getting? Did you know what you were getting was so special in that first Cloud9 roster?
Well, I knew that they were winning against TSM 90% of the time.
Okay.
And TSM was the best team in North America at the time, right? They won LCS. And so I knew they were really good. Whether that was going to last or not, I didn't know. But I was, just, you got to understand that esports wasn't anything like it is now.
No.
Right? It cost me, I think, around $10,000 to buy out these players. Or it was
my God.
The economics of this was completely different. It wasn't a big stretch for me to let my wife, like, she agreed with me spending this money. She fully supported it. Said, go for it, go do it. It wasn't a huge, it was more of a time investment than a dollars investment.
Right.
I didn't expect, like, I knew that the trajectory from esports was really good. And I knew that eventually we would be in the same breath with traditional sports. But I didn't think it was going to happen as fast as it did, because the viewership continued to skyrocket and the visibility on the scene continued to skyrocket at a rate that was, really surprising to me. And when I was talking to my first investments, like when the current like franchise league was being put together, I told my investors to not expect like the growth that they were hoping for maybe 10 years. Okay. But we were reaching milestones that I had set out like 5 years out within a year or two. So I did not expect for this to grow as fast as it did.
All right. I think that's a perfect statement for esports as a whole, but it's also in a weird way a great statement to kind of encapsulate that again, that initial Cloud9 roster, because those first two dominant splits just catapulted this organization, to the forefront of the competitive league conversation, and very quickly, you guys are challenging the biggest brands, the brand you came from, TSM, on all levels, not just on the gameplay level. You're now challenging from a brand level as well. But let's talk about that early roster, because what's interesting is how much that early roster seems to carry over into the now C9. And the current C9, a lot of the discussion is about that next chapter, finally turning the page and saying this is just the next iteration of this org. But it's taken quite a bit of work, I think, for the fans to let go of that initial roster. So I just want to give the proper time to that roster of 5 players who did so much.
Sorry about that.
No worries, man.
Go ahead and turn off the notifications on that now.
Fair enough. No worries. But yeah, I just kind of want to give the proper time to that roster and really kind of understand from your perspective what it is those players did for your organization.
Yeah, I mean, that was an incredible group of guys, right? And not only were they incredibly skilled at the game, but their energy and personality were fantastic to work with and for the fans to latch on and grow with. And so immediately, not because if it was just like 5 like super good guys but with no personality at all, we wouldn't have grown nearly as fast as we did. But if I look back on it, like I picked up 5 really good people who are extremely good at the game and really interesting. And it allowed me to, pick up a really strong Dota team because the visibility on the brand got strong. I picked up a really good Counter-Strike team of some really good Hearthstone players, and literally caused this, like, because the core was so strong and so interesting and so visible, it allowed me to snowball the company in the way that I wanted to much faster than it could have.
Do you feel at all beholden, or at any time, maybe you don't now, do you feel at all beholden to the brand image that those 5 guys created? Because again, you just it's this expansive organization now, even touching into different games with different audiences and different demographics at this point, different memes even from game to game, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel beholden, though, to any degree to the 5 guys and that original persona of Cloud9 as opposed to what you guys have maybe grown into now?
I think that there was a very specific culture that we had, and that it did get us initially to where we wanted to go really quickly, but in some ways it also held us back from where I wanted to go at some point. And I felt like with the team really revamping in October, I was able to stamp on, like, the final stamp onto the culture and the way we work, in a way that would take us to the next level.
Can we get into a little bit about what that is then? Like, I think this is a great way. Let's just get into this season and everything that you guys have done up to this point. But you can't talk about this season without talking about the contentious off season. Everyone from the outside of Cloud9 is always so happy in the off season to throw criticism towards the decisions that you guys organizationally make, and yet you generally come out better for it in the end result. So rewind me to that October time when you felt you could finally say, stamp of approval, we're now fully moving in the direction I want to go. What were those changes that you felt needed to be made?
What I needed from my players was that they felt a sense of respect towards the team, and that the team becomes ahead of the individual wants, and that they feel like they owe the team something. They owe the team their focus. They owe the team and their teammates the hard work every single day. They owe the team that they put in the proper effort every single day to get where we're going. And I think at some point along the way, there was a lot of individual before the team that was holding us back. And when, after Worlds didn't end the way we wanted to, I had a series of very difficult interviews with all of the players where, Sven Skaren told me straight up, like, I don't want to play with anybody on this team. I don't want to be coached by the coach anymore. I want you to change everything if you want me to stay. And here's the list of players that I would be willing to stay here and play with. That was my very first interview. And then that was like hours after getting eliminated. I'm like, my God,
wow,
this is going to be a tough one. And I went through every single player, and, a minority of the players were like, yeah, I'm ready to rebuild. I'm ready to do this, and it was really striking. Like when I had my interview with Blabber, he's like, I love being here and I want to rebuild with you.
Okay.
And I went to talk to Nisku. He's like, I'm still on the team, right? I still want to do this. And that was like the nucleus of guys that like got me motivated, and they still had the drive and the passion that I was looking for. Talk with Licorice. He's like, hell yeah, let's do this. We can do this. We can crush this. And then we needed to look and see what are the other players we need. Reapered, you on board? Totally in. Yeah, that sucked, but we're going to fix this.
Yeah.
And then we had this nucleus of guys that were just as motivated as me to do better than we had in the past. And we did our homework on figuring out which players matched the drive and personalities and work ethic of these players that remained.
Okay.
The fact that Sven became available was just like, me and Reapered was like, looked at each other like, oh my God, like, please let us get this guy, because this guy fits what we want. We knew it without a doubt. And then, interestingly enough, like Dignitas reached out to me and said, hey, you want Vulcan? We're kind of interested in Zazel. And we're like, what? Yeah, I think that could be pretty good for us, right? I think that might work out. Of course, it didn't end up being that simple of a transaction.
Right.
And $1.75 million later, woo! I got my boy.
Worth it though, so far.
TSM has her $50 million facility. I've got Vulcan, and exactly. I think I got the better deal.
Hell yeah, that's what I like to hear. I was going to say, it wasn't just Sven. There were two really huge pickups for you guys this offseason, and it was those two. But side note on a comment you made earlier, just Licorice, watching that guy come out of his shell this year, really kind of blossom into a personality, has been one of the great pleasures of this split for me, in all honesty. His play, still top tier, but we already knew that from his rookie split. We knew that this guy mechanically had something special. Yeah. I personally have taken, great joy in watching him kind of just, open up to the world and put himself out there a little bit more, and just kind of his earnestness, his honesty, the way he approaches any interview. It's more of a statement than a question.
He's an incredible person. And like, I remember my interview with Licorice specifically because, I was set up, his agent told me, I think it's going to be a tough call, Jack. And I'm like, uh-oh, what's going to happen? No. And so I get on there and I tell him, look, this is why I think we failed. This is why I think this is what I want the personalities of the players to be like. This is the drive we're looking for. These are the players we're looking to pick up. And he's like, oh, this is a much different call than I thought I was going to have. I like what you're saying, and I'm totally in. I was like, whew, because if that didn't happen, it would have been like, there's no other like NA top like him. And I would just say this, actually, I want to rephrase that. There's no top like him. And so, the fact that he's NA is really fantastic for me.
Hell yeah. And that touches on another thing, which is that Cloud9 has always been given credit as the one organization that really does foster talent. I'm not trying to throw shade at the other 9 organizations. They all run academy teams.
Go for it. I do it. I do it every day.
You're really good at that. You're really damn good at that. And that's probably the last thing we'll talk about is your journey, personally, as and how this team has maybe affected you and personally coming up. But I want to get to that at the end. Let's continue talking here about the organization that you've built, because it's not just the 5 players, it is also the staff behind them. And of course, the head of that is Reapered. And I know that there's many behind: West Rice, Rainover, Mateus, and beyond, right? And there's a huge organization of people behind it, but we'll start and primarily focus on Reapered, because he has been a mainstay for the team for quite some time now. But when you were building this team and when you brought Reapered in, what was it about Reapered's approach that aligned with you, or what spoke to you about Reapered to say, this is the guy that I'm willing to put, the lives of these 5, players in his hands for a number of years and trust him to guide them and build a championship winning team?
Yeah. It's tough to summarize what Reapered means in this organization. I think it was back in 2016 when we signed him. And at that time, Lemonation
we
was
had
our coach.
Drinks 2016 Worlds in Chicago. I remember Reapered in the hotel lobby.
That was his first Worlds, I think.
That was Chicago. It? That was Chicago Worlds. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally remember that. That was an amazing event. And so we were looking for a coach. And we just had massive roster changes. This is like what basically when we moved High and Balls and Lemon, they moved him onto to a challenger team to go farm our LCS spots for me. And
the good old days.
You're welcome, FlyQuest. You're welcome. Yep. When he was. I was first introduced to him by Papa Smithy, great guy, and he said, "You should talk to this guy. I think he's fantastic." And he didn't really speak English at all, right. And so I hired Robin as a manager slash. He was basically translating Korean to English and English back to Korean nonstop for us, wow. and the command that Reapered brought to that room for our first week of scrims, I'd never seen anything like it. most of the coaches would be like throughout the scrim would be just like scribbling down notes the entire time, and then be reviewing the notes, trying to talk about the guys, about the game minute by minute on what was going on. But Reapered had like a real conversation with the players, trying to understand the perspectives of what they saw, and then would just click into different minutes in the game, knowing exactly where strange things were happening and asking their thought process on what was going on. And it was like the players, I could see them like learning and leveling up like in that week. And we had actually had Coach Fly scheduled to come in the next week to scrim us, but all the players were like, no, we got our guy. Like, I don't want this guy going anywhere. We've learned so much this week.
What a vote of confidence.
Yeah, it was. And it was like, for me, it was the first time I'd seen a real league coach.
Okay.
And it was amazing. Like within a few years, he was, we didn't need a translator anymore. He was speaking fluent English. Robin has gone on to be a GM of my Overwatch team. And he's still with us, amazing guy. But like Reaper, he's that smart to learn English to like fluent level within a couple of years.
My goodness.
It's not fair. Like
it really isn't. And you know what? He's got 4 coaches, a coach of the Split Awards, and I think he deserves every single one of them. No question. Absolutely no question. And so we've landed on the guy that we're going to entrust with building the roster, but we don't land on this roster of 5 guys until now. And this is kind of where I want to talk about a funky period in Cloud9's history, because it would be oh so weird to ever say you guys were underperforming or that you were a bad team, because you always made it, right? We talk about Cloud9 as the team that always makes it internationally, but you were making it internationally and making it further than other domestic teams internationally, all while not achieving the domestic success that you had in your first 2 splits. Yeah. So what was that kind of limbo period like for you as an organization, where it was like, we can't seem to get it done, right, in these interim moments or throughout the year or in these domestically heightened moments, and yet we can somehow translate and represent our region the best of any team internationally? That's like, there's a disconnect there.
I can't tell you the number of times where I was 100% confident we would win LCS 2 weeks before the finals. And I got to this point where like we would be coming in the final week, and I could just see the energy level had dropped down, the focus had dropped off. Players were playing other games, besides League of Legends, and they had like literally given up the game before we'd even got there. And try as we might, we couldn't get that focus drop off to stop happening. It happened over and over and over again. And it's, there's only so much you can manage and coach away on some of these things. Sometimes it requires you to reevaluate your roster and make sure that you have people that are just as dedicated to actually finishing this split, getting better one day at a time, and to have that rigor to actually I need to work out. Why am I working out an hour every day with a strength trainer? Because best of 5s are hard. And you get to game 4, and if you haven't been working out for the last 3 or 4 months, you get tired, you lose focus. You haven't learned to push yourself when you're uncomfortable. And I couldn't get my prior iterations of rosters to actually take that to heart. And it, and you speak about my team, like I know you spoke about Gary, who is, is a doctor of psychology who works with us, a former Navy SEAL. And we talked a lot about like the problems of the past and where I wanted the team go. And he really helped crystallize the culture that I was looking for. And then we took it across we basically had like a workshop where we flew all our coaches out, back from Korea, flew all of our managers out. Like, this is how this team is going to run going forward. Yeah. Once everybody totally had buy-in, when we spread it across the players, and all the players totally had buy-in. And then, at this point, I don't need to tell my players how important this moment is. I don't need my players to work out every morning. I don't need to tell my players to not play in other games. They're self-policing. Gotcha. Like literally Gary can just kick back now and just put his feet up, because the work that we did in October, November, December, January, February, it's kicking in now. Yeah. And it's, and so it feels really good. I'm super proud of those guys.
That does point to, that points to something interesting that you keyed into there, which is again, this idea that Cloud9 invests into domestic talent, or seems to be the organization that can take unproven talent and unlock them. And then we see very quickly on the biggest, the biggest domestic stage, them perform. But I only bring this up because what you said there to me keys into the idea that you care more about mentality, mindset, work ethic, all of these things than you do talent. Obviously, talent's important. Yeah. You're not going to take a bronze player who's mechanically capped at bronze, and no matter how hard they work, okay, they're just not going to become an LCS pro.
Right.
But it does seem that there's a striking difference in your mentality and perhaps the mentality of your whole organization compared to others, where talent is not the first metric that needs to be met.
Yeah.
Or not the most important. I shouldn't say first.
It's a box that needs to be, it's a box that has to be checked. But all the other stuff, like if you could be the most talented player. And I've had some of the most talented players I've ever seen on my rosters, but because their mindset wasn't correct, they brought down the team and they brought down themselves. And so it's a whole package and you have to have it.
Without a doubt. Let's talk about then now this version of Cloud9. That's what I want to hone in on, because we're less than a week away. We're half a week away from the championship game where you guys already await whatever challenger prevails in Evil Geniuses versus FlyQuest. But this roster of 5 has already achieved so much in hitting 17-1 in the regular split, tying the record of Immortals and falling just short of the perfect season. But let's talk about expectations coming into the split, because community expectation was that TL would be 1. And a lot of people did have this Cloud9 roster as 2. So even with some of the moves you guys made and some of the hubbub around that, people still had lofty expectations. Well, as we know, the split went nothing like that, and Cloud9 has just completely trashed the competition. So what were those first week or even preseason discussions for you guys in terms of goal setting and framing this split as opposed to what we saw?
Like once we had signed like Vulcan, he was the last piece to get locked in. We all knew that we were going to crush it. Like there wasn't a doubt that like we're probably going to win this split. Sick. Like we knew we were really good. We had to go out and prove it, but like I could just tell, like, like what did Vulcan and Sven want to do? Like as soon as this contract signed, get me on a plane, get me to Korea. We need to grind. So we're not holding this team back. They land in Korea. They're doing like 16 hours of gaming a day. They got to top 50, like on the ladder quite quickly. They were beating out top duos in Korea, like before they came back. And, I remember talking with Reapered and he was just so happy. He's like, finally, Jack, we have the team that we've been looking for all this time. So there really wasn't a doubt in our mind.
Now, what about as the season progresses? Again, there was really no period of doubt really for you guys. You said, you were winning. But did that stress build up? Did you have conversations with the players about now this expectation of the undefeated season? I talked a little bit to Licorice in another version of the queue where he said the 18-0 actually kind of scares me.
Yeah.
Because if I'm 18-0, I don't know how to get better. Right. And for him, and it keys into this mindset, he was so improvement oriented where he's like, I want losses because I want to be better.
Yeah. I think even in this last loss with EG was a relief. And I don't know exactly how to like articulate that well, but the whole perfect season stuff, amazing KDA, mid tower,
right? The 100 OKDA for Sven,
all of these narratives is a distraction to us, and we don't. And it's really hard to push that out of your thought. And it felt good. Like I know Sven felt like relief, like when a KDA got cracked. He's like, okay, I don't need to think about that at all anymore. I don't need to think about the mid-tier. And they really don't anyways, but there's still this little inkling of it around.
Right.
Kill that thing.
And isn't that amazing how, like I have a little devilish smile on my face because so much of that narrative is about the narrative that both us as a broadcast community itself builds. And it's so interesting to see how there has to be maybe that kind of line of separation between the teams and everyone else for like, I know that they're telling this story about us, but this is our story. And is that a conversation that you guys have pretty often? Like, yes, I know the fans think this. I know the fans, want to see this, or they have this opinion of Sven, but on the other side of it, Well, here's an even easier way to talk about it.
I could answer that because here's the thing is like, I'm always worried that they're talking about it and they're constantly impressing me that they don't give a damn about it.
Okay.
And they're like, I'm going to fountain dive this.
There you go. I asked a shitty question. You gave me the right answer.
Because they don't care and they want to make sure they don't care.
Yeah.
And they also, I think a lot of teams now say this, losing is learning. It's absolutely true. Like when you lose, you definitely learn more than when you get out of a win. And like when we're scrimming other teams, sometimes we're like, should we be scrimming TSM this much? Because those players are really good. And we know when we're beating the crap out of them, I think over a 90% win ratio. Yeah, we know that they're learning a lot more each time we play them than we are out of them. And so it's like, it's definitely, so we got to okay, so then we need to make sure like every scrap of information that we can pull out of this scrim that we're pulling it because we don't want that gap to close.
You caused me to think about something, and this might be a much bigger conversation that maybe we can pursue another time. But out of curiosity, have you given much thought to the way that practice is structured in esports versus the way practice is structured in traditional sports? I'm certain you've given thought to it, but how have you given thought to it? Because we scrim against the teams that we are going to end up playing. In football, you scrimmage against your own team. Everything is primarily done. Yes, they have some preseason games, but it's very few. The majority of what you're practicing is all done within the organization. I know there is some scrimming done with academy teams, but how do you view kind of the differences between traditional sports and esports and, either the obstacles that we have being a technological sport in keeping things secret, in finding a way to better yourself without bettering your opponent?
I mean, it's constantly a shell game that you're playing with the other opponents, trying to like, hey, like, I'm going to play this team and 3 weeks out. Like, how much are we going to show them? We're going to show them this strap, but definitely we got to keep this like in our back pocket. And as we're going through like matches, we can kind of we're always keeping a tab on what we've showed in the past to make sure that we have something that's unknown. And so overall, like, trying to find the similarities to traditional sports is hard because like in football, they can't go all out against other teams or practice teams because they have a lot of injuries and stuff they need to be real careful about. But in scrims, we can go all out. In fact, I would say we go too hard in scrims and we're limit testing and we end up like doing aggressive plays and our opponents are doing aggressive plays that they would never do on stage, which gives you a false sense of confidence. Like that's I've actually never heard someone speak about it that way. In traditional sports,
you practice light, you play hard. And in esports, you practice hard and you play light in a sense. Yeah. I mean, you're still playing with intensity, but you actually are playing a safer version of your game.
Yeah, we're not going to break a wrist when we're scrimming these other teams. We don't have to worry about that. Yeah. And so they play really hard and you'll get like champions that like require a lot of fighting that look great in scrims. You get on stage and they just don't have the juice to actually do what they did in scrims. And so it's super interesting. And I think that, it really like this, that was 2018 when the benching happened. Our academy players were having incredible scrim records against LCS teams. And that's why one of the big reasons why they came up to be our LCS team. And our scrim record was insane. We were doing super well and they would get on stage and they couldn't play the game because the game they were playing at home in scrims wasn't being played on stage. And so part of that adjustments process was leveling up like, Azazel and Blabber to learn how to play on the LCS stage, and then also shifting the roster around to have the right people playing, like getting Jensen back and getting Sneaky back.
Speaking of that leveling up process, again, no secret that your org is farmed talent that now exists across multiple orgs within the league. What does that mean for you as an individual, and how personally do you now kind of navigate the waters of like, caring about these guys, but now they're opponents.
It's super interesting, right? Because like a lot of these guys know how we operate. I've known them for years. We got super close, and then they're and I look across the stage and like, especially against EG, like more than half the play.
Yeah,
I'm like, I want to see Kumo do well. I want to see Dennis and Zazel do well, but not today. You know,
make him 0-10.
Yeah, I mean, tell you, like when I saw Poppy get picked with Kumo, I'm like, I know this is going to be tough because he's super good at it. And, I know he's got other champions I'm thinking about. Curious to see if they get, and I don't want to give them up, but it's exciting because I know these players so well and what their strengths are. Yeah. When I see them play against other teams, it makes it extra exciting for me. And I still care a lot about those players, but they are the enemy now.
I want to bring everything here kind of full circle, strangely enough, to that first conversation we had, which is around what's happening in the world at the moment. Because what's happening in the world at the moment is affecting the remainder of the spring split. We've already been playing a number of games online, and we've talked a little bit about what your org has done to alleviate that and navigate that for the team. But we're about to enter a finals weekend unlike anything we've ever experienced. We're not going to be flying there. We are not going to be put up in a hotel, and we are not going to have tens of thousands of people in an arena with a tailgate beforehand where the floor is vibrating and there's this massive pre-show with a singer, and then the team introductions where the guys get to walk on stage out the tunnel with the fog and all of that. Just give me the org take on there's got to be some deflating aspect, I think, for the players of this is the year we're going to surge back onto the scene and win a title as Cloud9 after those first two, but it's going to be done in this way. Can you just kind of give me the overall take right now where everyone's head is at in this environment? It's
been interesting. It has made me think about the past, and long ago, 6 years ago, I guess now, we won spring 2014. Yeah. And back then, these are early days of esports. We actually weren't at a venue. We were
That's
just
actually very true. That's true. We're at Manhattan Beach.
That's right. And I remember running onto the stage, like my players and the casters go, "Yay!" And that was about it.
Yeah. And then I think we squeezed all of you onto the analyst desk.
Yeah.
For a big old interview. Yeah.
And it kind of feels like that, right?
Okay. So we're going back to the old days.
But those, that doesn't take anything away from the effort that everyone has put into the season. So I don't know if we're going to win or lose, but if we do, it's going to be awesome. It doesn't take anything away from it. If we don't win it and some other team does, they should be super proud of what it took, because the effort to get there was incredible, especially when you consider through the circumstances that all of us have been dealing with it. There are players on every single team that have their whole families are very far away from them, and I'm sure they want to be there to comfort them. But they're here working, doing their job, and not only supporting their team, but our whole League of Legends community that's interested in esports. I've mentioned this before. I've gotten many letters or emails from fans that have told me hey, when the LCS is on for a brief period of time, my life feels normal again. Yeah. I'm so appreciative of all the effort that the LCS team has put together to still make this thing happen. Yeah. Because it's a really special opportunity to give some entertainment to all the people that support us. And with traditional sports, essentially, out of the picture, we're filling a pretty big void.
Yeah, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I'm not going to kid myself and say that the work I do is the most important work in the world.
Yeah.
But the work that we do is more important now than it was before.
Yeah, and absolutely.
To your argument there, that in this day and age, with everything that's going on, having that outlet, having the feeling of normalcy, that moment or that period of normalcy within a week that is anything but normal, can just be the most comforting thing.
That little break, just to kind of help you recharge. And then
my favorite days right now, they already kind of were. I love my job, but even more so now when I get to log on for the LCS and just be in a call with the other casters, watching something that we love, having that ability to laugh and joke about something, to be amazed by a play, to ridicule a play, but just having that human connection and the shared love of something is just so comforting. And And I'll let that bring me to my very final question of all of this. We've talked so much about what you've done for Cloud9. I want to get a little bit of a sense of what Cloud9 has done for you, Jack, because I'm sure it's been a wild journey, from the days where esports was barely even a thing to where we're at now. What has this org as a whole and any aspect of it done for you personally over, the last, what are we at, 10 years now?
Yeah, it's actually amazing, right? And I think, I loved my prior jobs working at Crunchyroll. I used to work at Curse before that as well, and I loved these companies, and it was really fun. But to be working for Cloud9 and to be able to surround myself with people that are just as passionate about us doing the things that we do, and be totally aligned on the culture that we're trying to build has been really special for me and my life and my family's life. Super thankful to the system that Riot set up. Like, above all publishers, Riot has done it right, and it wasn't always perfect. Like we've locked horns several times,
many a hiccup.
Yeah, but like I'm so thankful that Riot has had like the proper like mindset on how to do esports and how to do it correctly. And I mean, the people that I'm surrounded with now, I'm so impressed with them. It's like, yes, we have like all-star incredible players right now, but honestly, it's the same level of coaches, the same level of managers like Jonathan Tran and Vincent, Chrissy, like Gary, all, our data management team. These people are just incredible. And we all have like the same goal working together. Just having the opportunity to work with people in that environment is really special. And I can think back to when I was just like a sales guy working for Crunchyroll. Yes, I loved Crunchyroll, but it's a difference in when you're working shoulder to shoulder with a bunch of people with a common goal. It's pretty special. And I definitely need to recognize that.
Yeah, from something small and internet-based to this behemoth that you have built that is just staffed by some incredible people. We obviously know you already are competing in the finals on Sunday, but before that, it's EG versus FlyQuest. Your prediction for which team you'll be facing, is it a rematch against EG, or does the kind of surging FlyQuest in the postseason surprise us?
I think it's going to be a hell of a fight. I think it's going to be 5 games. These teams they're both really good. There's been a lot of talk about Cloud9 being really good, the other teams being crap. That's not the case. Like these are both really good teams, and I think that they're gonna be worthy opponents. And I've seen them grow in strength through the split. I mean, I have to. It's really weird. FlyQuest is a team that I stole them their LCS spot.
Yeah, you've got a hand in every goddamn pie there, Jack.
Yeah, and EG has literally 4 of my players, right? And
may as well be a C9 v C9 finals.
Yeah. I mean, they wouldn't say that, but I think as far as hype, EG winning and then playing us would be incredibly hype, and I think they're a really strong team, and they can bring the fight to us. So I think if I was to pick, just purely on emotions, I'd want to see EG win. But I think it's a toss-up on who actually gets out.
Fair enough. Either team has had to run the gauntlet to come back and challenge Cloud9 in the finals, and that finals match does promise to be a brilliant one. I hope to see Cloud9 challenged. While I'm happy to give my prediction that regardless of which team meets them there.
What's your prediction?
My prediction? Well, so my prediction is Cloud9 wins 100%.
Okay.
In an earlier interview I did last week, I said I don't believe there's a world in which Cloud9 loses, which is maybe too definitive a statement, but I do stand by it. In terms of the actual series score, I would probably say 3-1. Just from the perspective that we've seen you guys drop a game, so we know you're fallible, and EG is one of the teams to have done it, and so I have to lend kind of that credence to them, or just say they've done it before, they can do it again. But I would say taking that one loss probably made you guys stronger and scarier. So we might actually see just a swift, 3-0, akin to Team Liquid's 3-0 win spring split in Miami, which was crazy, crazy fast. And so we'll see. Either way, I expect you guys to be hoisting metaphorically that trophy, since we will be at homes. But Jack, Always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here this week. And please stay safe, stay healthy.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is a blast, man. And looking forward to this weekend. It's going to be fun.
My pleasure. Cloud9 playing this week on Sunday in the 2020 LCS Spring Championship Finals. Opponent to be determined on Saturday. Once again, C9. Jack, best of luck to you this weekend. And we'll see you next time.
All right, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
See you.